Consciousness, the final frontier. These are the voyages into the universe between your ears. Our mission, to explore collective wisdom, seek out amazing secrets, and spread the message of personal potential.
And that somehow they find their way back because you grounded them. That's where the roots part, right? You grounded them in things that are important. And even if they lose their way, somehow they'll come back. So I applaud you, Gabby, for being a concerned parent. First of all, that is, I'm telling you, if so many parents are not even aware of the problem, and that's where I have a tough time, right? My job becomes harder when I'm trying to convince a parent that there's a problem, right? If they don't even see it, then I'm kind of like, well, I see a problem, and it's going to be a very big problem, and they're in self-denial, and they're in denial about this. It's like, no, that if you could only see what I see, you'd be a little bit more concerned. You'd be a lot more concerned.
You know, Roger, can I ask you about that?
I see.
Go ahead, Gabby.
Yes. Yeah. Just to comment that, as a matter of fact, I've seen so many cases around us when kids were basically lost to drugs. Just very dramatic events when we knew people personally, families, when great young, teenagers were practically within a couple of years were lost. Mm-hmm. Beyond, just problems were. It was like a huge crisis. Family didn't respond. There was no communication. Great families. Mm-hmm. They were not in any way, using or exposing their children to these kind of things at home, and not at all. Mm-hmm. They simply didn't address the problem quickly enough,
mm-hmm.
And the time was lost. And so I was quite shocked. And when I got the first signal, I understood I needed to react resolutely, quickly, because I thought, okay, the time here of essence. It's almost like for me, it was a matter of principle. I needed to drop everything and get this taken care of. Because also I knew how receptive, I knew the personality of my child, mm-hmm. how receptive and sensitive to judgment, to what other people thought of her, which was something that was already instilled in her from earlier days in school, from all this disciplining, you see. So she had already that pattern that I needed to do this and this and this, and then I will be accepted socially, right? And so I knew that when it was on the scale, okay, do I do this to be accepted, even though it may not be something that I would see my parents did, or whatever. She would be compelled to do it, to satisfy that social need to be accepted, right? So I knew it.
God bless you to recognize that.
Yeah. So, but more broadly, guys, I understand that bad influence or whatever, right? But more broadly, I've been helping my kid doing homework, preparing for the test. History book.
Okay.
History book, reading the book, reviewing the chapters. It goes from, basically, check the table of contents. It's from one war to the next war to the next war. Basically, the way we teach our kids history is the history of conflict, of human conflict. And the pattern that's being taught is that humanity solves issues by fighting. That's what my kid gets. He is 12. He's getting this. War is a part of human evolution, you see. So then they graduate into the world, and they're numb to what's happening in the world right now. I mean, how many people did go on strike now after we bombed Syria? Another big uprising. There are some still socially aware people who understand that. I mean, There's, what's going on? That's not the way to improve.
But doesn't that, Gabby, doesn't that go back to the idea of, that's the TV news coming at him, and when he comes home, or even while you're helping him with his homework, you can point out that this is not all that's going on out there.
I cannot possibly. That's the question. I cannot possibly counterbalance. That's why I'm asking this question, because I'm thinking.
Uh-oh. I don't know if his phone cut off or.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Yeah. Kind of looks like he's still with us.
Yes, he's there.
He's there in spirit. All right, so while we wait for him to come back, I wanted to jump in on something that you mentioned, and that's denial.
Yeah.
How often, my feeling is that denial kind of requires that somebody is aware of something, and in order to deny it, right, you have to be aware of it at some level, versus just being completely ignorant of it.
Yeah.
Is that what you find is it, maybe the question is more, in the people that you're working with, the families you were talking about, where they don't even see the problem. Does it tend to go to be more of one or the other, where they're just completely ignorant, or they actually have some kind of inkling of what's going on and they're sticking their heads in the sand?
Yeah. I'd say the people that are out and out totally blindsided would be, if I had to put a number to it, maybe let's say 25%. And the people who, when I really, really probe with them, when I really start probing, 75% will say, I knew there was a problem, but I didn't know what to do about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, and I'm like, that's fine. I mean, again, I try very hard. Now, I'm human, and there are times that I absolutely make judgments about people at times. But generally speaking, I try very hard not to make a judgment about a parent, because I don't know what they're going through. I don't know what their home life is. I don't know what their upbringing was. I didn't live with this kid. Now, I've lived with a lot of kids. Don't get me wrong. I've raised many kids in clinical settings where I've had breakfast with them and went to bed at night watching over them, and done 24 hours and 36 hours. I mean, I've done a lot where I've raised people's kids. But I still don't know what it's like for a parent, for a particular parent in a particular situation. So I'm very clear in my head about not being judgmental about certain things. But see, a lot of times, by the time a parent comes to me, they're in a crisis, and they're in a little bit of trouble. And it's the kind of trouble where it can't be denied anymore.
Right.
And I keep saying, if you'd only, and again, to make that decision, to even say something like, if you'd only come to me 2 years earlier, right off the bat, I've ruined that relationship.
Yeah.
Right? I think it in my head, right? But for me to say, where were you 2 years ago? Or in some cases of in the school system, when I've worked with kids in the school system, and I've told parents, and then, 2 years later, 3 years later, they were in grade 4, and now they're in grade 8, and now they're 13 years old, and they're totally unmanageable.
Yeah.
It is so hard to not say, I told you so.
Yeah.
Right? Because you believe your child is great, and I'm not denying your child isn't great. But there are parts about your child that isn't great, and those are the parts that I talk about, right? So I acknowledge your child's strengths, but I also am not turning a blind eye to their weaknesses either. I have no ego investment in saying your child is fantastic, right? You have an ego investment in saying your child is fantastic and can be doing no wrong, right? So, but I'd say that there are parents that are totally caught, blindsided, boom, what the heck happened? And in Canada, there was a few years back, I think 2013, 2014, there was a Vietnamese couple that came. to Canada, emigrated, and raised their child here, and had these really, really high expectations of their child. Parents were high achievers. Father was a pharmacist, and mom, I can't remember what mom did. Anyway, had these really high expectations of their child, and the child couldn't live up to it. And the child knew that, mom and dad had these expectations of me, and I'm just not able to perform to that level. I just don't have what it takes, or I'm just not committed enough to do what it takes. One of the two, but either way, she couldn't handle it. And so didn't make it into pharmacy, faculty of pharmacy at the University of Toronto, and but lied to her parents about it and said that she got in and she was going. So for a semester, every day she was going to school as if she was going to school, but she wasn't. She was just going to play hooky because she was expected to leave home and didn't know what to do. The tension, the stress got so bad for her. Her parents were in such denial over who she was that she ended up hiring a hitman to kill her father. And you can look it up on the Toronto Star. It's called the Jennifer Pan story, right? And she hired a hitman to kill her father because the house of cards was starting to crumble around her, right? And there was other complicating factors. She was dating, she had fallen for a guy that her parents would have gone for, blah 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 blah. But I mean, like, what kind of stress is a teenager under when you consider doing that to your parents because their expectations, they'd be so devastated and so lost and so in denial about something that you're driven to that stage. I'm not making excuses for her behavior at all because I don't think there's ever a good reason for doing what she did. But I'm saying, while we're casting judgment on this girl, can we try to take a little step back and say, let's look at it from her perspective. What drove her to that as well, right? And her parents were absolutely clueless and in the dark about it.
These, one of the interesting things to me on this kind of a story is the cultural influence from her parents, and versus what they brought her to, and you in some ways you have what they grew up with was probably exactly what they expected of her. Exactly, they're just modeling what their parents did. And so it was very strict, high expectations, high performance expectations, and probably not a lot of nurturing, that side of things. And then you come to the West, and there's, whether it's done properly or not, there's a lot more emphasis, a lot more weight put on the nurturing side of the coin. And so she's walking around with other people in an environment where they now have a whole different sort of set of expectations of her. I don't know where I'm going with that exactly, except that it kind of hit me that, I wonder how much, if this was happening in Vietnam, would she have reacted the same way?
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's kind of like people who are dirt poor and they're happy, and we look at them and go, oh, how terrible. But because they don't know any different, they're able to be happy.
Yeah.
And we think that, to be happy, you've got to have more than what you've got. But expose them to more, and suddenly they're not quite so happy anymore.
Yeah. There's absolutely no correlation, and you can read all of the literature. I've read quite a bit of it. There's absolutely no correlation between the level of happiness and the things that you have. Absolutely none.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how big a purchase you make, whether it's the $4 million mansion or it's the $250,000 cigarette boat. It doesn't matter, right? I think they said, if I'm not mistaken, it's 6 weeks before the euphoria from the new purchase wears off, and you go back to your baseline level of happiness, regardless of what it is.
Yeah.
Right. The only thing that builds happiness is the experience and the gratitude that you have from having that experience, whether that experience is going somewhere and doing something, or whether that is having acquiring something material and showing the gratitude and feeling the gratitude to say, I'm so blessed and so thankful that I was able to buy the $4 million house or whatever it may be.
Right.
Right? Self-esteem has everything, and happiness has everything to do with your internal state, and has nothing at all to do with, whether you have a dirt floor for a floor or whether you have, ceramic tile for a floor. Right? And so it is always amazing to me how I'm so a part of this, and I'm not even saying me versus you guys, me versus them. It is so not that. I fall into this trap too. I mean, I have a very nice house with a very nice backyard. I have a waterfalls in my backyard, and I'm so grateful and thankful for this thing. I desire to have a Porsche 911 Turbo, maroon with a black interior. I mean, I'm very clear about certain things that I want, but I try, I aim, I live my life in a way that whether I do or don't get that Porsche has nothing at all to do with how good I feel about myself and how happy I am with my things. If I'm unhappy with my things, if I'm unhappy with myself, it's because I'm happy with certain things about my character or about the things that I want to change about my situation. That has nothing to do with what I own on the driveway, whether I own on the house or the clothes on my back. It has nothing at all to do with that. And we are raised in North America in this consumerism mindset of, well, we have the Toyota, well, then we should get the Lexus. We have the Lexus, well, then we should get the Porsche. We have the Porsche, then we should get the Aston Martin, whatever it may be, right? We have the 2,000 square foot house, we should go for 4,000 square foot house. You have a 200 foot lot, you should go for the quarter acre lot, right? It's like, when does it end? When does it stop?
I don't think there's a problem with that, except for the word that you were using. It's should, right? It's if you have the program running that says you should do this, there's the issue. If you have a program that just says you want it, there's nothing wrong with it, because you're going to go out there and get it, and you're going to appreciate it, and then you're just looking for the next thing that you want. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but if you're feeling like you should be getting it because all my friends have it, right, or whatever it is, or you see it on TV and all the cool people have this, then there's something that's not quite, you're firing in the wrong place somehow.
Yeah.
And you're kind of only because it kind of sets you up for some kind of big crash at some point.
Well,
right?
What they say is like you're trying to impress people you don't like with things you don't even want.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, you're really living your life backwards, right? I want the Porsche because I want the Porsche, right? I want the Porsche because when I was 7 years old, I saw it on a TV show, and ever since I was 7 years old, it's like, wow, I'm going to own that car one day, right? That's what I want. I'll strive for it.
You want it because you like it.
I like it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But, it comes back to this whole issue of self-esteem, and Gabby touched upon this with his personal story, which, I totally acknowledge that it takes so much guts to even talk about a personal situation at all. Right. But I wish he was back on. Maybe have to do a part 3, Tim. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, because this has gone by really fast too. Yeah.
But Gabby's point that I really wish he was here to hear is if his child is the type that will get influenced by external peer pressure, well, that comes back to my whole point about the whole self-esteem thing, because if you don't have a solid sense of self-esteem, that's when those children, and you see it. Yeah. Those are the kids that are desperate to win affection. Those are the kids that are desperate to win approval, and they want to avoid situations where they think they're going to lose. They want to win, but they don't put themselves in a situation where they could possibly lose. And that's when they're overcome with anxiety. That's when they're in a situation where they are plunged in depression. That's in a situation where if they lose, they become very resentful. That's a situation where those are the kids that have very low tolerance of stress. And those are the kids that are so susceptible to a more powerful personality, a more influential personality that tells them you got to buy booze this week because if you don't, you're a loser.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there have been times when I was called a loser and it hurt. Absolutely. But did it hurt so much that I said, okay, I'm gonna do it? Yeah, there were. I was a normal teenager in that respect. There are times that I caved to peer pressure, but there were times that there was a line that I just would not cross. And when that line came, and for me, it was drugs. I will drink, and I have no problems with doing that. I'm having a glass of red wine now because we actually have dinner guests right now, and I'm doing this podcast. But there are things that I will do, and a line that I just won't go past. And when that line hits, I am immovable because I have my own sense of self-worth, and what violates my sense of self-worth cannot be broken. Cannot be broken. Right.
Right.
And so when I hear this from Gabby, I want to ask him questions like, do those kids that you know, whether they're your own or your friend's kid, your kid's friends, do they seldomly finish what they start? Are they influenced by other kids because of their own inner problems? Do they avoid eye contact? Do they always present like they're sad? Do they have a problem with authority? Right, like all of these keys are clues. They're clues to does this kid have a self-esteem issue? Because if they do, there's a problem there. Right? Are they trying to control situations aggressively? Are they overimpressed with wealth and things? Right? Do they procrastinate a lot? Do they feel like they can only win a point by making somebody else wrong? So it's not possible for people to have equally viable points of view, and we're just going to have to agree to disagree. Right? Are they able to do that? Can they accept compliments without totally deflecting, saying, "Oh no, that's not." That is not me, or thank you, but it wasn't. That wasn't such a good job. Yeah. Right. Do they act? Do they try to act in a way that they are above everybody else? Do they try to justify, rationalize their own mistakes and defeats? Is it always somebody else's fault? Are they always trying to please people? All of those things. I mean, I think I named about 6 or 7 there. All of those factors. Those are warning signs to me. They're a child with a self-esteem problem, and just because they have a self-esteem problem doesn't mean they're going to go to drugs and become an alcoholic. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying they're at risk. I'm saying that you as a parent should pay attention, and that's why I totally applaud Gabby for saying, as soon as I saw this, I have to do something. Right. God bless him. God bless him, because man, if there are more parents that had that attitude of I need to do something right now. Well, I might be out of a job, actually.
That's what we're shooting for. Roger, out of a job.
That is. I always say I try to work myself out of a job. If I fix your kid, fix. There's that if I say I fix, that means your kid was broken. Your kid wasn't broken, and I haven't fixed anything. What I did is change the mindset. That's what I do. Right. Right. Yeah.
There's so much in there. But one of the things you said kind of early on in that piece was talking about a person with a strong personality and having influence. And, you and I were both at actually different events over the same 3 days last week. Mm-hmm. And I was made aware of exactly that at the event that I was at, where somebody, but what I was made aware of was the power of a strong personality, and somebody who's, in particular, somebody who's got clarity on what they believe and what they're presenting, because it will make you look past all kinds of other things that would normally make you turn around. Mm. And there were presenters on the stage. One person in particular was a presenter on the stage at this thing, And if I saw him in the street, there would be no connection. There would be no reason for me to have any desire to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
He gets up on the stage in fuzzy cat slippers, right? And he's there to talk about website development. And thankfully for him, he had a captive audience kind of, and he knows his stuff. He's sharp, but that initial impression was not good.
Yeah.
But the clarity of his message and the strength of his personality made me want to know more, made me want to listen to this guy. Yeah. So it was an interesting demonstration for me. And he wasn't the only one. There were a couple of other people that the personality came through, and you can see why certain people, and when you start talking about people with the really dynamic personalities, the kind of the Jim Jones kind of things, that you can see how, people can just go into zombie mode and follow people, and then you get the mob mentality that kicks in, and all kinds of crazy things happen.
It's so funny you should say that. You probably don't know this, but I'm Guyanese. So when you make a Jim Jones reference,
I don't have to explain it.
Yeah. And there is a mesmerizing
Hitler,
quality.
Yes.
Yeah. And people actually describe Hitler as mesmerizing, right? As when he spoke, he had your attention. I've seen some film footage of Hitler giving a speech, and he had to stand about 3 feet away from the microphone because such was the belief and the power of his words that at anything less than 3 feet, he would overwhelm the microphone and overwhelm the audience. Mesmerizing is such a good word for some of these people.
Yeah.
But on a lower scale, there are some kids that, social status, looks, money, whatever it may be, or just the plain old strength of their street talking, fast talking way that they present themselves. They sway kids that don't have a good sense of themselves. And I was one of those kids, by the way, that thankfully I wasn't around those kids very often, but I was a kid that didn't have a very good sense of self early on. Right? So it's only in some ways by the grace of God that I didn't make more mistakes than what I did, but I also didn't put myself in those environments either. So I mean, there's the nature, and then there's the nurture aspect that comes back to so many times, right?
Yeah.
I was careful in parties that I went to, and I was careful in environments that I was in and stuff like that. And I so get, from Gavi's point of view, his daughter wants to be accepted. I mean, high school is all about fitting in until you learn that the gold is in standing out, right? And as an entrepreneur, as anybody that creates anything of value, of power, of purpose in this world, it's about standing out from yourself,
but
from others.
As a just your regular kid at that age, understanding what you just said and owning that and incorporating that into who you are is so hard if you haven't grown up with that, right? If that's not in your background already, hearing those kind of words and getting that suggestion would be so hard to make a part of yourself.
Yeah. I always say that if you want to raise a child to be successful, you need to teach them two things. I mean, Dennis Waitley talks about roots and wings, but he also talks about you need to teach them two things for true success. Number one is to be able to live with uncertainty, and that is uncertainty in anything, who your friends are, what you want to do with your life, where your next meal is going to come from, where gas is going to come from your car, where the rent payment is going to come from. You need to learn to live life with a certain degree of uncertainty. You know what? I'm 15 years old and I don't know what the heck I'm going to be doing at 35. You need to be okay with that and say, I don't need to figure out how to get to Florida. I just need to know from Toronto how to get out of Ontario first. Once I get to the border, then I'll figure out how to get through Detroit.
Right.
And from Detroit, and you figure it out as you go along, right? So you need to learn to live with uncertainty. And the second thing you need is delayed gratification, and to know there's a process for everything. And me personally, I'll tell you I'll make a personal statement, is that I have a tough time with that. Delayed gratification is something that I have struggled with, in the sense that maybe not for material things, but in terms of achievement, in terms of success. If there was a 4-year degree, I wanted to do it in 3 years. If there was a certain, I have a uncertified blue belt, uncertified brown belt in judo and jiu-jitsu, and I wanted the black belt, and I haven't gone for it yet, and at this stage I don't think I will, but once upon a time I just wanted to skip belts and just go for it and just go to tournament after tournament after tournament and get tournament points, and so I've wanted to skip ahead and do stuff, but a speaker that I heard one time, his name is Mir Ezra, he said from stage that all the problems many of the problems that you encounter as you're going through learning something or development stage, all the problems you encounter is because you didn't learn the next step properly and you try to skip steps. And as soon as you try to skip steps, instead of going further ahead faster, you actually fell backwards and you got frustrated because you're supposed to learn things in a certain way, and each skill builds upon the other. And when you get impatient, that's when you go backwards.
I've got a theory about the whole impatience thing.
Yeah.
I think at least a piece of it is that if you buy into metaphysics, right, and whatever terminology you want to give to this source energy that we're all a piece of,
God, universe, spirit, whatever.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. But when we're in that plane, and we are 100% a part of that, there is no, and I expect we probably don't care about physical, maybe there isn't even an option for physical stuff, but any sort of desire that we would have is met in an instant, right? Because everything.
The grass does not strain to grow.
Say that again?
The grass does not strain to grow.
Yeah.
We can make transformational shifts but if we're stuck in a transactional thinking, then we can't make those transformational shifts. I totally agree with that.
Right, but I think the frustration it's just a carryover. We come to this plane, and there's still a piece of us that we're not conscious of, but it still has an expectation that we want something that's just going to happen.
Yeah.
And so when we are having the physical experience, and we try to learn whatever, when it doesn't come right away, we have an unjustified but justified reason for expecting it.
Yeah.
That's it. I think that's at least a piece of it.
And if you want to get woo woo with me, Tim, I'm so there with you. I don't come from that place naturally, but I've learned so much about law of attraction, so much about not just physics, but
quantum physics.
Quantum physics, thank you.
Yeah.
I've been reading so much about that, and I'm absolutely fascinated by this field. And the whole idea of postulating, I mean, I could talk for days about this, and I know that we're not going to, but I'm fascinated with the idea that by having the expectation and proclaiming it to the universe, proclaiming it to God, and manifesting those things that have no logical reason for being able to create, and people creating it. I've seen lots of this. I've seen this for my own life.
Yeah.
Right? To be able to do that is an absolutely fascinating field for me. I am not equipped to teach that. I'm very much a student of this, and I'm fascinated by this. Tim, if you ever teach a course on this, I would fly down to hear it, because I'm very much listening to this thing lately.
Well, you know what? It's an interesting topic. It's the kind of thing that once you start to wrap your mind around what it really is telling you, you find out, you come to a realization that it's two-sided, right? It's first thing is you come to this realization that, yeah, we all, every one of us has the capacity to create anything we want right now. Right now, there's no waiting. Right now, whatever you want. Are we going to be able to do that? No, right? Because that's it. But we're the really common phrase in these circles is that you're a energetic being having a physical experience, right? So the really woo-woo part of this is that there is nothing truly physical. We just experience it that way. But so because of that, we're going to have these, I forget what I was going to say, but we're going to have these struggles in creating what we want.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But the flip side of finding out that, man, I can have anything I want is suddenly you realize, okay, that means I'm responsible for what I get. And it's no longer an option to say, well, this happened to me, or that person did this to me, or whatever. It's, I created this for myself going forward, Yeah. And I personally, I think it's an unconscious piece of, there's an unconscious resistance to that people have that keeps them from being more open to the ideas, because they, once you start talking about it's on you to do it, then people shy away from responsibility, and if you don't do it, then there's blame and blah blah blah.
It's a very ego damaging stance to take when you say, I create that situation where my child is doing drugs, or I created that situation where I got into a car accident, or I got into that situation where I went broke and lost my house. It is a tough thing to
it is,
take
but
your part in that.
Right? It shouldn't be, because if you understand that we're doing these things at a different level, right? It's I'm not even sure unconscious is the right word, but it's happening from a different perspective, from the greater perspective. We're creating lesson possibilities for ourselves. And it's not that I've let myself down because I was in this big accident, right? I'm trying to teach myself something, and every time there's something that's, quote unquote negative that happens, there is an opportunity there to learn something. Yeah. Whether we go looking for it or not is another question, but there's an opportunity there. So,
yes.
But the problem with these discussions, they go really deep, really fast, But what's exciting to me is that quantum physics is coming together with metaphysics. It's proving the metaphysical perspective on things.
Yes.
And religion is being brought into the same thing. So I think personally, at some point, all three perspectives. All three of these camps are going to come together, whether they like it or they don't, and they're all going to understand that just because this one, they're all right, right? But they seem to have this idea that if I acknowledge that something you're saying is true, that somehow that negates what I'm saying. And it just doesn't, it's not that way. They're all saying a lot of the same things, presenting it in different ways, but they're coming to this singular point where they're all going to have to finally recognize that, hey, guess what? We're buddies. We're all saying the same things. We're all creating, we're after this. We have the same goals and stuff. And, sometimes it really is just as simple as the two camps are saying the same thing, just in different ways. Yes. If you're not so close to one or the other, you can see it. They're both, how come you guys can't see it?
That's right.
So
yeah.
I think it's pretty cool.
I heard it described that religion is just a lens through which you view spirituality. You view your understanding of the creator, the essence, the God, whatever you want to call it. And religion is just a lens that you view it through.
Yeah.
Right? And somebody used an analogy of what if there was 3 flies on a stained glass window, and one fly lands on a red piece, one fly lands on a blue piece, one fly lands on a yellow piece, and they're all looking inside a church. And they describe to each other, what do you see? Well, I say yellow church, I say red church, I see blue church. All 3 of them are correct, but all 3 of them do not. Each individual one does not have the whole picture of what the inside of a church looks like.
Right.
Right.
Right. I'm working on a book right now, and one of the things I'm trying to lay out in there is a similar kind of an idea. Let's say you're 40 years old and you've been raised in the middle of a street, right? Whole life, and your whole life you've been facing that side of the road, and everything on that side of the road is just destruction, gray, ugly, nothing functions, it's just terrible, right? What's your perspective going to be on life? Mm-hmm. That's all you know. That's all you know. There can't be anything else.
Yeah.
But what if somebody spins you around and you find that on the other side, you've got mountain meadows and waterfalls and animals and it's sunshine and everything is lollipops and rainbows. Mm. That's the perspective you're going to have if that's what you grow up looking at.
Right.
And it's the same world. Both of these things exist in that world.
Absolutely.
But, and the great thing for us is we get to choose what we want to look at.
That's profound, Tim.
So,
that's profound.
I don't know. There you go.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you on that. What you focus on expands.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. I kind of feel like it's time.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of a danger that, if we bring up another topic, we may be another 40 minutes.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
And you got guests.
I do have guests, actually. I do have guests, but, Tim, I had, it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. I have an absolute, I think, profound connection with you and with Gabby when he's with us. I could talk to, I have a feeling I could talk to you guys for days and share some really great ideas. And maybe in the future we're going to do something together. Maybe we're going to write a book together. Maybe we're going to share a stage together. I don't know, but
let's plan for it.
This is not I don't think this is the end of this relationship because I feel like I have too powerful a connection with you guys. So
thank you, and we feel the same way. I've got plans for some other things that I'm not going to expose here, but you're a part of that. It relates to the podcast, but they're going to be fun. So yeah. And then maybe we'll do another one of these, and where all we do is get woo-woo.
I was thinking. I said, how about if we do a part 3 and just go woo with it?
Yeah. We're up for that completely.
I would be awesome because I could listen to you wax eloquent about that.
It's really kind of how this whole thing came to be.
Yeah.
He and I are part of a group that meets, and we would have these discussions, and stuff would start to get juicy and deep. And then there's always somebody that wants to pull it back and let's stay up on the surface. Yeah. And it was a little bit frustrating. And I just came to him one day and I said, you want to do a podcast and we can go talk to people and go anywhere we want. When he was like, yeah, let's do it. So that's what we're doing. We bring people like you in and we learn something and have some fun at the same time.
Well, I would love to go a little bit woo in terms of the way people think, in terms of the way people raise their kids, in terms of kids thinking. I would love to go woo in general. So I'm very much in that field, and I'm willing to ask you guys a bunch of questions and have you guys just go deep with your thinking on it, because I'm telling you, I'm so in that mindset right now about some of that stuff. So
that could be fun.
I'm going to say possibly part 3. I'm there for it.
We'll let you do the questions.
Yeah,
that'll be fun.
All right.
No reason we couldn't do that. This is our show, man. We can do anything we want.
Tim, an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you. And I want to do this again before you leave. Tell people how to get in touch with you or find you online, whatever.
Sure, yeah. I welcome any comments, queries to www.thefearlessparent.com or www.secondauthenticlife.com. That's 2ND, authenticlife.com. You can always email me, Roger Ramsukh at gmail.com. That's Roger, R-O-G-E-R, and Ramsukh, R-A-M-S-U-K-H, at gmail.com. That's it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, man. Good to have you.
Buddy.
Again.
Thank you.
And
absolute pleasure.
We'll maybe if nothing else, we'll just hang out online and
sounds good.
Drink a glass of wine together.
My pleasure.
All right.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Hi, this is Tim Starr. Thanks for joining me and Gabi on the universe between your ears. We really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us for a little while. And we'd like to see you again. So be sure to subscribe wherever it is you're consuming the podcast from, whether it's YouTube or Stitcher or iTunes or whatever the hell else is out there. We want to see you again. We also want to hear from you. So let us know what you think of each episode. Let us know if you got an idea for a future episode that you think would be just killer. Absolutely, let us know. All right? Thanks again, and we will see you next time around. Bye-bye.